Let's now take a look at activity 1 of our design 320 assignment, customize design number 2. And of course, at first, we're just going to read the proposal document. I think you are all capable of that without a video, and making a copy of the template. Let me at least go ahead and show you where those are. If we look at our VMware, you can go to the PC and look it up under instructor files, and then from instructor files, of course, you go to my folder, spring of 22, 320, customize project number 2, and you will find the Hamul land model in SketchUp, which looks like this, and in Revit, which looks like this. And you can even have it in AutoCAD if you want to make your own in either Revit or SketchUp from the AutoCAD version. So that's where you go to get that. And then it's also in the drive under week 11, along with all this other good stuff that you can get. So that's where we go to get the information to study the design document and to look over the whole thing. And that you can do on your own. But what we're really interested in now is how to complete slide 3. That was the difficult one. So I'm going to show you how you might do it in a number of different ways with weather resistance. So if we look up just what does weather resistant mean, what does weather resistant mean? There we go. We can take a look at that. And the ability to prevent corrosion. So that means if it's made out of a metal, it needs to be made out of a non-corrosive metal. And you'd need to look up what those non-corrosive metals are. In general, you would think that it would be aluminum, brass, bronze, stainless steel, galvanized steel, something like that. Or it would have some sort of a coating on it that would prevent corrosion. So those would be one of the things if you're talking about metal to prevent corrosion. We know that corrosion just isn't even a factor for wood or fabrics. So this is really talking, corrosion is talking about metals, but loss of material or any sort of deterioration would be something like if the wood is tends to degrade under high sun conditions or wet conditions. So you'd need to look up what woods are weather resistant. In general, they are redwoods. Of course, we don't like to go cutting down a ton of redwoods. But then there are also treatments that you can do for certain woods. And then, how long does it have to last? If it only has to last 3 or 4 or 5 years, most woods will do just fine. And for fabrics, then you have another series of questions, and plastics, you have a series of questions. So that might be something that you could list a set of materials in weather resistant. He said that's what I want to make things out of. Of course, things like brick fall into those categories of weather resistance. Adobe does, concrete does. Okay, so you can list a series of things. Of course, some things you don't want to be weather resistant. Your plantings and things like that, although it has to be weather appropriate. Another thing you could do is look for standards. Here's an outdoor furniture standard from Underwriter's Laboratory. So you could say, well, I want to conform to UL 4041 as an example. And you would need to put a link in here so that somebody knows what you're talking about. And then when you specify furniture, you would say must be UL listed to 4041. And here's another one that you could say, or maybe it just needs to light water exposure of plastics, 4329, or light water exposure to paint, 4587, or plastics exposure, 4892. So these are all things, and if you've had Design 300 already, you're somewhat familiar with this methodology, and if you haven't, that's okay. This isn't really, I just want you starting to think about these things. So that would be an example of how you would do weather resistant. Type in what does it mean if you don't already have a solid idea. And either, oops, here we go, either choose materials that you're going to use, or choose construction methods that you're going to use, or protective methods that you're going to use that you know are weather resistant, or specify some sort of a standard. Here's another one. Here's a standard from just a company that does furniture inspections. And so you could say, oh, look at that, ASTM. You could follow this for manufacturing and testing of products. Outdoor plastic chairs as an example. So you could also just call out a company that you say would have to be involved. Now that's getting a little bit heavy duty because they may not be in your area. Underwriters Laboratory is worldwide. So that's and this is sort of showing that you know what's going on. Okay, so that's your methodology for doing slide number 3. Now, of course, I'm not going to do it for you and give you a hard example. Comfortable is a whole nother issue, right? What does comfortable mean? You're going to have to identify that for yourself. Maybe it's something that somebody could sit in for at least an hour or 2 hours, or it has cushions or something like that. And of course, it might not apply to the cooking area or the shade structure. And so not everything, these will not apply to every facet that's there. Sustainable, I do want to tell you about. Sustainable means something in the materials and building realm. Sustainable means that over the life of the project, you can renew that resource over its life. So if it's made out of some type of wood, by the time that product has deteriorated to the point where it's no longer useful, you can have created a new source for that. So you can have grown more wood or something like that. Or sustainable means that you can recycle a large percentage of it and recreate that product from the recycled material. So if you recycle it and it degrades to a lower grade that you cannot use for that material, that is not sustainable. That's just recyclable, which is still a good thing. Sustainable means that you can recreate that product without degrading further the environment within the time frame of the life of that product. That's why bamboo is considered sustainable, because it grows so fast. However, to make bamboo useful, usually we put tons of phenols and formaldehyde and stuff like that in it to stick together, and that's very toxic stuff. So everything has its drawback. So when you do sustainable, think about how you would measure that to make sure that it's made out of a product that can grow back in its lifetime. Concrete is not considered sustainable. bricks are not considered sustainable. However, concrete, because that one's actually open, because you can recycle the aggregate, which is about 80%, 90% of a concrete mix, sometimes even more. Some people do consider concrete to be sustainable, whereas the cement portion of it is not, but it's a small portion. So there we go. That's a little bit on our activity 1, particularly with slide 3 of how you would fill this out. Okay, so maybe you're going to put meets UL standard something, and then you would go to that standard, okay, and you would put in your source for it. So this is getting a little bit deeper than what we did last time, looking for a little bit more standardization and a little bit more technically solid stuff, right? And so, or you might put on stainless steel, aluminum, and aluminum. And maybe you're going to say you want a canvas with a certain weave strength. Okay, so that might be what you do in meeting that one. Okay, so there we go. That is your activity 1, slide number 3 of your Design 320 Week 11 assignment guide.